Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. What's the craziest HOA, Homeowners Association, rule or regulation you've heard about or live with? Had an HOA which regularly complained about petty things. I did fix them, but was super annoyed. I made a sign, very cheaply, white with black text, which said, Yard of the Month, or something like that because it would annoy them greatly and wasn't technically against the rules. Later, they actually made a really nice and expensive official sign, HOA Official Yard of the Month. LOL, really? I was joking. Nice graphics and nice metal frame. Really official looking. I noticed it on a walk at night when most people were already inside. I grabbed the sign and moved it to someone else's yard, which was obviously crap with lots of weeds, etc. Yeah, that sign never showed up again, LOL. Oh man, I'm so glad this came up. I worked in property management for a while, and at one time I had a portfolio with 30 HOAs. And guess what I go to do? Write rule violation notices for all of them based on what the HOA board members told me to send notices for. Sometimes I cringed while putting them in envelopes, feeling so bad for finding some sweet old lady $50 for planting purple flowers when purple is not on the approved color list and demanding she dig up all her hard work. Or finding someone $75 for their garbage can being too visible from the street. Or demanding that someone plant a new tree in their park strip, then finding them and making them plant a new tree because it wasn't between 60 and 72 inches. It was 58. The board president measured it. I was once made to resold my front lawn in the middle of summer with average daily temperatures over 100 degrees during one of the worst droughts on record, while the whole city was under watering restrictions. The new lawn, which I had spent several $100s on, promptly died, and they tried to make me replace it again, but apparently enough people had complained by that point that before I did, they agreed not to make us replace our lawns until the water restrictions were lifted. Confession bear time. I had to get up early for work, 3 a.m., so as I drove through the neighborhood, I looked for people watering their lawns in the middle of the night on violation of restrictions. Most people were just trying to avoid being hassled by the HOA, I know, so I left them alone. But when I saw members of the HOA board doing it, I reported them to the city. Had a friend who moved into the suburbs and upon moving in received the thickest effing rulebook I've ever seen from the HOA. The majority of it were allowed/banned lists. Here are the flowers you are allowed to grow and what colors of them you are allowed to grow, and here are how many of them you are allowed to grow and what kind of pots you're allowed to plant them in and where in the yard you can plant them and how tall you are allowed to have them and so on, so forth, etc. They had these lists for not only plants, but things like statues you'd put in the yard. Gnomes are allowed, but they may not be more than 3 feet tall and may not depict any inappropriate material. The color, you could have the house painted. It may be yellow, but only these specific shades of yellow. What kind of wreath you could put on the door. Wreaths may not be bigger than blank. When you could have barbecues or parties in your yard, and what kind were allowed, how tall your grass could be, the kind of mulch you were allowed to use in your garden, and just so much. You know how you sometimes step into a person's house and it's the kind where you feel like you can't sit down because you're afraid you'll ruin something? I felt like this as soon as I rolled into this neighborhood. Friend is still living there. I don't know how she does it. I know someone where his HOA prevents you from taking the trash out the day before pickup. Like if taking your trash out on Sunday night for trash day Monday was worthy of a $50 or $100 fine. 12:01 a.m. Monday is fine, but 11:59 p.m. Sunday wasn't. Best friend was in negotiations to buy a house. For about $100K less than he expected, deal in front of him, pen in hand, realtor moving pages around. Sign here and here. Oh, and there's this. This is required to purchase the house. It's just an HOA agreement. Friend handballed it, looked at the agent, tore up entire agreement right there. Not going to happen. This wasn't part of any deal, and because you hit a condition of sale, I'll see you at the real estate board hearing after I report this. The weirdest one I knew of was that you had to have your lawnmower to a specified height and no shorter. I think it was like 2 3/8 inch or something really arbitrary. I didn't move there because the neighbors were all a little too friendly for me. I was just looking at the property and the 3 immediate neighbors came over and wanted to talk. I could kind of tell it would be a thing if I did live there, and I am not a people person. I briefly rented a condo with some friends. The landlord told us that there was an HOA but didn't tell us about all their crazy rules. We got fined $60 for leaving a snow shovel on our front steps overnight. We weren't allowed to keep anything on our front steps or lawn. We also got fined $80 for putting our trash on the curb at 7 p.m. the day before garbage day. Turns out that 8 p.m. was the earliest we were allowed to put it out. We all broke that lease and went our separate ways after a few months of living there. The fines and constant threatening phone calls weren't worth it. Oh man, I used to live in a condo with a friend too. They were effing crazy. It was almost entirely old people. All the owners were at least. And they did everything they could to F with us. When I signed the papers, I asked the PMC guy if I could smoke on the balcony since I was on the top floor. He said sure, they don't care as long as it's not inside. I would go out there in the morning with my coffee or cereal or what have you, and I would go out there after dinner to browse Reddit and relax or whatever. I always used an ashtray and never flicked my butts, yet they told him I was flicking my butts out there and yelling really loudly at somebody or whatever. No idea. Had to start walking down 4 flights of stairs and walking to the end of the block. They lied and said we threw parties that lasted until dawn. Even one time where I was out of town and my roommate had stopped living there 6 weeks prior, moved back in with her boyfriend. They fined us for an oil stain in our parking space that was there prior to us moving in, which I also thought was weird considering that they were redoing the parking lot at the time and it was only a matter of a day or 2 before my space would be redone. We could only have 1 vehicle registered to our parking space. Any other vehicle parked there would earn us a fine. We could only park in our space, even temporarily. When I moved in December, mind you, they wouldn't let me park in front of the building to move my stuff in. I had to park in my space and lug my stuff over the snow and ice. Only allowed an overnight visitor 14 times per year. Not one person, any visitor. The president of the HOA would walk around the block looking for unfamiliar cars, taking note of the license plates, and watch our condo. My friend flew in from another state for my birthday, stayed with me instead of a hotel room since I had an entire extra bedroom. She saw his overnight bag, bam, fined. There's more I can't think of, but they drove us up a wall. I've dealt with some weird HOAs in my time. Let's see if I can remember all the weird rules. 1. Fined $500 for being seen outside wearing camo. I had to wear it to go to work. HOA president was seriously anti-government, anti-war, and anti-military. He pressed the issue right to the point some guys from the DoD explained to him the folly of his ways. 2. Fined $250 for not joining in on the block party. I was asleep and had duty the next day. 3. Fined $50 for not watering my lawn regularly. In a drought, where the city would fine you for watering your lawn. 4. Fined $400 for parking in front of my house. No matter that it wasn't my car, but the neighbors. I was fined just the same. 5. Fined $100 for an unwanted display in front of my house. That display was a plastic jack-o'-lantern during Halloween. 6. Fined $50 for putting up blackout curtains. 7. Fined $50 for putting up an electric fence to keep kids from cutting across my lawn to get to the lake. One summer, I worked for a residential landscaping company. The major job we had that summer was this massive mansion owned by a family who owned an oil company. They bought a massive amount of land to build their house on and wanted to buy a adjoining lot to build a guest house. HOA told them no, and I guess during the meeting, the father who owned the company and was a no-nonsense type of guy, but was generally nice to us, may have called the president of the HOA a couple mean things and told him that he felt the decision was wrong. Anyway, every day for a month while we worked on this site, we had someone from the HOA coming to inspect the work and trying to find the homeowner / make us redo whatever we did. Make sure the fence was the right height, boards were spaced properly, paint matched everyone else's. That resulted in another argument because apparently we got the wrong paint, but we didn't, then suddenly we did again. They were looking at the amount of grass they had in the front yard, literally anything they could think of. They made sure to try to ding the homeowner on it. The homeowner actually did get fined a couple times because we left tools out in the open, even though we did everything we could to hide them. I have owned one home. I spent years saving up for the down payment. It was a new neighborhood. My house was old, but the rest of the neighborhood was built around it, and the HOA had just been established, and the first president was a retired doctor. I have 2 flag holders on the 2 posts in front of my porch. I flew the Tennessee state flag and another flag. One month, I decided to fly the Culpeper flag. HOA president came knocking at my door demanding I take it down because his wife was British and she is offended. I told him in nice words that he can suck my D, and he tried to fine me. I contested it with the board and got the fine overturned. Later on, he tried to bust me for other things. I told him I do not want him on my property at any time, and if I catch him on my plot, a good couple 100 feet from the sidewalk and surrounded by trees on the other 3 sides, I will call the cops. I left him a notice on his door and let the HOA board know about the notice. I come home a week later to a fine ticket on how the lettering on my door was not in standard. It included a picture up close and a signed confirmation from the president. I walked over to the HOA president's house and got into a verbal argument with him. I called the cops and eventually took him to court, which resulted in a restraining order. It got so messy after that. The HOA dissolved and my neighbors threw a huge party. I go into work early some days to get at least some of my work done before the idiots show up. Usually before work, I go on about a 5-mile walk with my dog. I live in a condo, so I walk about a 1/4 mile up the road and walk around in the neighborhood. About 8 months ago, while I'm walking, a golf cart with actual lights and sirens pulls up in front of me. This huge old lady gets out and starts yelling before I can even get my headphones out of my ears. Turns out, walking dogs isn't allowed before 7 a.m. according to the HOA. I informed her that, first of all, I don't live there, and second of all, the streets were all public, so she couldn't really do much. She responded by threatening to call the cops and have me arrested. I just told her to do whatever she felt she had to and walked away. This really peed her off. She started following me in her golf cart with the lights and siren going. This continued for about 10 minutes until the cops arrived on the scene. I stopped and talked with them for a bit and explained my side of things. Took maybe 20 minutes before they came back over to explain what was going to happen. In the end, I had every right to walk my dog at any time of the day or night as long as I had a light when it was dark and had reflective clothing. I had both. As for her though, they tested the siren, which exceeded noise levels for any time before 8 a.m. Then to top it off, she didn't have it registered for use on public roads and the taillights didn't work. As I looped back around, the golf cart was getting loaded onto a tow truck and I just kinda laughed the whole way back to my condo. Thank you for watching. Guys, thank you for all the support and the likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.